Welcome, everybody, and I call the committee to order and recognize that we're on the unceded territory of the Algonquin people and that we have an honored guest, and we have the Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, if I have the title right. Do I? Yes, thank you. It will today we're dealing with Supplementary Estimate C, and pursuant to Standing Order 81-5, the committee begins its study on Supplementary Estimate C 2016-17. Votes 1C and 10C under the Indian Affairs and Northern Development referred to the committee on February 14th, 2017. And the department has the Honorable Carolyn Bennett, Helen Laurando. Merci beaucoup. Paul Topol. Hi, welcome. The witnesses will be given up to 10 minutes to make an opening statement, and then we'll proceed like we normally do to questions and answers. The minister's only available for the first hour, and then we'll suspend the meeting, and we'll have a chance to work with the department after that. So I'll open it to the Honourable Minister, and 10 minutes.
Thank you, merci. Miigwech, Madam Chair. We're glad to be here with you today again on the traditional Algonquin territory to present our departmental Supplementary Estimate C for the 2016-17 fiscal year. Le sous-ministre des Affaires autochtones et du Nord.
The Deputy Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, Hélène Laurando, and the Chief Financial Officer are with me today.
As the new chair, and we look forward to working with you and all of the committee members on tackling the critical issues facing Indigenous people and Northerners. We also want to acknowledge the important work of this committee over the past several months on the difficult and complex issues such as the ongoing suicide crisis in Indigenous communities. And just to say that I'm very happy to hear that you've decided to study the Default Prevention Management Program, and we look forward to reading the results of your work and be able to put in important changes. So we welcome the scrutiny of these estimates. As you know, Supplementary Estimate C is an important exercise as it's the final appropriation act for this fiscal year, and with your assent, the work that was started this year in Budget 2016 can continue in key areas. Le dépôt de budget supplémentaire des dépenses C.
The tabling of the Supplementary Estimate C allows for more than an examination and approval of department disbursements. It permits us to look back at the progress we've made since the tabling of the main estimates and Supplementary Estimates A and B.
As you all know, made an unprecedented investment of $8.4 billion over 5 years for Indigenous peoples. These funds are critical to reconciliation and to advancing the government's objective to renew the relationship with Indigenous people by making real progress on the issues that matter in daily life. Issues such as child welfare, housing, water, education, culture, and food security. Je suis fière de vous informer.
I am proud to inform this committee that the funding is flowing into the communities. As of February 1, 2017, over 90% of this year's money was already allocated to Indigenous communities in the form of funding agreements.
Investments have resulted in 201 water and wastewater projects, 965 housing projects, 125 education infrastructure projects, and 167 culture and recreation projects. Les demandes budgétaires s'élèvent à
These estimates support requests totaling $92 million, bringing the total appropriations for the department to approximately $9.5 billion for this fiscal year. This is an increase compared to last year's total appropriations, which were $8.9 billion.
Largely technical matters as the fiscal year comes to a close. Included in these estimates is $56 million to support emergency management operations on reserve. There's also $22 million in funding for Operation Return Home, the Manitoba Interlake Flood Remediation and Settlement. Operation Return Home will continue to help repair, rebuild, and reestablish 4 Manitoba First Nations that were impacted by the severe flooding in 2011. Notre gouvernement est d'avis que la
Our government believes that negotiation, rather than litigation, is the best way to settle disputes and right historical wrongs.
that I have the mandate now to negotiate a resolution to the 60s scoop, a dark and tragic period in our history. And I'm also proud that our government successfully settled the Anderson case action, that we have appointed a special representative to engage in the discussions towards a resolution of the Godfredson class action. These estimates contain more than $3 million in funding for research in the Indigenous childhood claims litigation. I cannot stress enough that settling these types of claims is not only the right thing to do, but it continues to advance our reconciliation efforts. La somme de
Funding of $1.8 million is going to the Arctic Regional Environmental Studies to inform decision-making on offshore oil and gas activities, which could affect these 3 regions of the Canadian Arctic.
Commitment to integrating Indigenous traditional knowledge into the assessments of potential impacts. As you know, last December, the Prime Minister announced that Arctic Canadian waters were declared indefinitely off limits to offshore Arctic oil and gas licensing, with a science-based review to happen in 5 years. Arctic Regional Environmental Studies will play an important role in that 5-year review. These studies will draw on both scientific and Indigenous knowledge to support decision-making around possible future resource development and other commercial activities in these regions. Votre opinion va vos.
I value your opinions, advice, and assistance as we continue to implement an agenda that advances reconciliation.
Canadians during this secret path performances. We have 150 years behind us that we need to learn from, and we've got 150 years ahead, and we'd better just get to work. So I'm looking forward to the next steps of this work together. My colleagues will now join me in answering your questions about these estimates on behalf of all of us. Thank you, Miigwech, for the invitation to be with you today.
Thank you very much. The first round of questioning, we start off with MP Massey.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, Madam Minister, and thank you to your officials for being here. To answer our questions on the Supplementary Estimate C, I have a more general question to begin with. In the 2016 budget, $8.4 billion had been set aside to be spent over 5 years, and for 2016-27, it's $1.5 billion included in expenses for this year. So, general question. Can you give me an idea of the expenditures which have been done under this $1.5 billion amount?
It is almost all of the money goes into the grants and contributions. And so a very small percentage in our department goes to administration, around 7%. I think in most accounting evaluations, up to 15% is viewed to be normal or whatever. So most of our money is in what's called Vote 10, which is the absolute that has to go to Indigenous communities or has to be in a transfer in that way, that the vote one is the part that actually is for the department to run these programs. And I guess, as you know, we are trying desperately to build Indigenous governments and Indigenous institutions, and our overall goal is to get out of the business of grants and contributions in programming dollars, and to be able to do this differently in building Indigenous governments, self-determination, as well as Indigenous-led institutions.
et parce que vous êtes sur ce sujet,
Since you are on that topic, in your view, are there specific obstacles in the transition in the way you spend that money? What are the obstacles you have to overcome when you transfer those funds towards communities and band councils?
Difficult problem we have right now is the capacity in certain communities to be able to use the money and apply early. It seems to be that the communities with the most difficulties don't have the capacity to get the proposals in on time. And so in housing, we did it in 3 tranches such that we could work with the communities that needed it a lot for a third entry point on housing. But as we go forward, these are the kinds of things that we hope to be able to change, because in what was before the year-on-year funding, it meant that if you can say, the communities that weren't as needy were the best at getting their proposals in, and so that other communities continue to fall behind. So we're trying to make sure that we are building capacity and that we can find different timing and be able to do this long-term planning. So, Mr. Massé, say the ability of us to encourage comprehensive community plans seems to be the way. And in British Columbia, it's going very well. There's just recently another in Manitoba. They've begun a conference to build that capacity. Because once you've got a comprehensive community plan, where it's not just chief and council, it's the principal and the nurse and the police chief and the elders and the youth all planning for a long term. And now that we have money that goes over a 5-year period or can do this, we can actually help them really develop not only their infrastructure needs in a really sort of credible way and cohesive way, but we are learning that also deals with child welfare. It also deals with missing and murdered Indigenous people. When communities come together to develop this plan, and then we can back them up, them knowing that this year they get this much, next year they get the next much, and that I think is going to help us lift some of these communities that have been struggling in a way that I think all Canadians want us to do.
merci. Dans le budget,
Thank you. In the supplementary estimates, and you referred to this earlier, you're asking for $56 million to reimburse First Nations and emergency service providers emergency interventions on reserve. Can you perhaps explain to us these emergency services? How will they specifically be funded with the $56 million?
That these severe weather events seem to be way more common, and it really is. It means that First Nations have to put their own money out, and that we try and help them as much as we can, like with so that $7.4 million is in for the wildfires in Alberta. That a lot was $19.2 million was the Red Cross for evacuation with the flooding in Manitoba and the tornado and wildfire events in Alberta. The long-term evacuation costs in Saskatchewan, the flood recovery costs, and then there was the major Thanksgiving storm in Atlantic Canada. So these are the kinds of things that we actually have to we have A-based funding that is always there, but we actually have to send in the supplementary estimates, we have to ask for a little bit more depending on how many events there were.
Merci. Madame la Présidente, est-ce qu'il me reste
Thank you. Madam Chair, do I have any time left?
une dernière question
Perhaps a final question? The final supplementary question. In the supplementary estimates, $4 million were earmarked for prevention. Will any measures be taken to improve strategies based on prevention to help communities deal better with emergency situations?
It is a partnership that is about working with First Nations on mitigation and the prevention of having things in better shape to deal and in preventing these emergencies. So in terms of it is the First Nations then identify their priority in terms of what they know has happened in the past and what they want to prevent in the future, and then we work with them on their prevention programs.
Thank you. MP McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Minister, for joining us today. I just want to start with a bit of a comment. The ability to and the responsibility that parliamentarians have to scrutinize the spending of government is one of the most important tasks that we have. It's your ability to look at what the plans are through the budget process. It's the ability through main estimates and a variety of accountability mechanisms to actually see how the government is spending the dollars that are worked so hard for. And of course, you notice we have a really important structure whereby we do that. I do want to note that unfortunately, First Nations communities do not have that same opportunity with the lack of the enforcement of transparency, the First Nations Transparency Act. They do not, and it's getting worse, the numbers of communities that get that basic information so that they can look at it and hold their governments to account in terms of how they spend the money. Certainly an example is there was money that went missing for a lunch program. I think, if communities had detailed information, they would perhaps recognize that they weren't getting that lunch program. So I just wanted to actually put that on the record because I do continue to be very concerned that there is not an opportunity for communities to have the same privileges we do in terms of holding their governments to account.
It's very important for me to put on the record that over 90% of communities do report in this way.
It's less now then.
And that the ones that are having trouble reporting are the ones with capacity issues. And so the fact that we now
Madam
have
Chair,
more and more communities.
With respect, I have some questions that I just wanted to make that comment, but I do have some questions.
But you also need to know that the AFN is working very closely with us on a mutual accountability because people also need to know what we are doing. And so
You'll have an opportunity to answer when Kathy poses her question. Thank you.
So I want to get into sort of the nuts of the estimates because, of course, that's what we're here for. And as we know, for communities, small amounts of money can be very, very important. So the first thing I'm going to ask you about is the $600,000 transfer from INAC to Public Safety to support activities related to an international strategy reduction. Now, that looks like a conference in Montreal, May 7th to 9th. $660,000 is a lot of money. It could build perhaps 3 homes. It could build, it could fund the Wapika program for suicide prevention. So it sounds like it's a bit of a gab fest in Montreal. I would like you to justify to the people of Wapika, the people of Attawapiskat, why this particular conference is a better use of dollars than perhaps funding their suicide prevention program.
Well, firstly, those conferences are attended by the people from communities who actually need to learn and be able to bring their standards up. So this is a way that they choose, and that we are supporting the people who apply to go to those conferences so that they can keep their communities well. But Paul can give you the details.
This is an
Yeah.
international strategy, UN, okay? Thank you.
So as we've just noted, we just discussed in Supplementary Estimate C, we are requesting $56 million in terms of extra costs related to the impacts on climate change on communities.
This was about
This conference that-
disaster reduction.
Disaster reduction
UN?
is related to what are best practices around the world related to events such as disasters, related to things like climate change. And so there is lessons learned from an international context that we hope that Indigenous peoples in this country will benefit from, and we therefore believe it's a benefit for their communities in terms of how they deal with climate change, which unfortunately will have disaster elements associated with their communities that they can. So the $660,000 is a benefit for their further mitigation issues, their ideas, best practices that can be shared across the world.
Okay, thank you, and I hope for the people of Wapika and Attawapiskat that makes sense to them, because of course every time you spend a dollar, there's opportunity costs in terms of what are urgent and essential needs. So I guess the next question I'd like to ask is, there's a $605,400 transfer from Health Canada for regional workshops, which is different than this UN conference. So can you tell me the details? And again, I think we need to put it in the context of $600 and some thousand. That's might be 20 orthodontic cases that are currently getting turned down in terms of approvals for, some regional workshops. Again, are they more than GABFEST? Are they going to lead to action? And are they more important than some of the urgent needs that are in communities right now?
There's about a minute and a half to respond.
I mean, I think it's the same concept that again, the money that is provided by Health Canada through First Nations Inuit Health Branch that is done in the benefits and non-insurable benefits. There is also money booked to raise best practices and to be able to find out what's going on the ground, particularly with things like Jordan's Principle, that what we've needed to do is to put people out there, and that's why we've got 3,200 more kids getting the kind of care they need since July 1st because of a better understanding of how that will be. So that's an example of the kind of information that needs to get out to communities via workshops and things, such that more kids can be looked after.
I guess perhaps
30 seconds.
I'll close with a comment. Sometimes when you come from healthcare backgrounds, doing the practical things on the ground really are important. And I think when we're looking at any of these workshops, UN panels, we need to, there is relevance to them, absolutely, but we also need to look at them in conjunction with making a real difference to the people that are suffering in communities. Thank you.
Kathy, with due respect, that continuing
I gotta move.
education is part of us staying certified as
Minister.
doctors and nurses.
We're
And this
moving
is-
on. We're
having
moving on.
people not up to date is really unacceptable for the people who live in those communities.
Thank you. I'd encourage the respondents, our guests, to respond to the questions when asked. MP Romeo Saganash.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for her presence today. I want to start with the water advisories in the communities, because I think that was a huge undertaking on the part of your government to eliminate those within 5 years. Within 5 years, there's still a major problem. It's a major undertaking because it involves a lot of infrastructure for the communities. It involves a lot of resources for support the water systems in communities, and for maintenance, sampling, the quality of the water, inspections, and so on and so forth. We're a year and a half into your mandate, and there's 3.5 years left for that to complete that commitment. Is there a plan?
There is a plan. Thank you for the question, in that we're very proud of the plan. I think that, as you know, we started with a huge deficit and lots of communities in terrible shape. We have worked with all of the communities with long-term boil water advisories, but also the communities that have high-risk systems that need to be moved to medium and low-risk systems. And so we are pleased that we've lifted the boil water advisories on 18. I think, as you know, of the 71 that are left, some of those are maybe 10 at Slate Falls, 7 in another community, so that to actually get water systems into those communities that have a number of pump houses and a number of boil water advisories, that we I think will make the significant progress. As you know, it's a 3-phase deal where we have to do the pre-design, then the design, and as well as the implementation. And as you pointed out, that takes time. But we do believe that we will be able to do this in the 5 years, as well as our budgeting for the maintenance and the training, because I think, as we heard on the news last night, that chiefs are worried that they train up an operator and then he gets poached to the local town. And so we've got to be able to make sure that we are building systems that can be self-sustaining within communities, but also having those proud people as the water managers in their communities want to be able to stay and look after their communities.
Well, yeah, we did perhaps eliminate 18, but unfortunately, some 12 others have been added to the list. So, but I'd like to see the plan, because
And
I think it's an important
we will be
piece.
able to release the plan to you. Of the 18, of the 12 new ones, 3 are in the 18, meaning that some of them just timed out at 365 days, and so they are in the winners.
Thank
but
you.
there's no question we've got to get to work on the 71.
Next question. The childhood claims litigation. There's a supplementary request for an allocation of $3.1 million. I want some clarification with respect to that, because are there litigation activities involved with that fund? I know that when I asked you the question in the House, you're pretty clear that you would not appeal that decision of the 60 scoop. But later on, after you went out of the House, you weren't as clear as you were in the House, unfortunately. And we hear that there may be a possibility of technical clarifications requested by your government, which is somewhat very clearly, as a matter of fact, a procedural delay in my view. But $3.1 million, if my calculation is right, $3.1 million for the remainder of the fiscal year is about $100,000 a day. So what is this money for?
This money is for the research to be able to estimate this. There are many, many, many childhood litigation claims. We really need to do the research on the kind of claims, the unique nature of some of them, but also the size of the class. That without having the facts, we won't be able to get going on the negotiations that hopefully will, be able to eliminate these. As you know, also the research is because language and culture is so important for the claimants in this, that it's not just about money. It is about having lost their language and culture, and that we need to know more about how that could be remedied, not only for the children that come after, but for the families.
Are you confirming that your government will not be seeking that technical clarification? Yes or no?
We always have to. I can assure you that we do not want to be in court. We want to be dealing with claimants and negotiating their way out.
Is that a yes or a no? Is that a yes or a no? You will not be seeking a technical clarification in this case, because the ruling is pretty clear that you're responsible.
Yeah. And we have no
and
doubt
like-
that we're responsible and that
Whether it
harm
happened,
was
whether it
done.
happened in Ontario, or Saskatchewan, or Alberta,
Everywhere.
it's the same thing.
It's the same. And that's what we feel very strongly about. We know harm was done coast to coast to coast, and we want to negotiate these claims so that the wrongs will never be righted. But we are going to try and do everything we can, particularly for those that want an apology, for those that want real progress on language and culture and getting their language and culture back, that we're serious about that. And that's the reason that we were able to settle Anderson, because even though Newfoundland wasn't in Canada at the time, we decided that we wanted to settle it, and that we wanted those claimants to be able to understand that this government was prepared
Who makes that decision? Who makes that decision whether or not to seek clarification in courts? Is it your department or the Department of Justice?
It's a joint thing.
Thank you.
And with Cabinet, yeah.
Moving on to the questions from MP Gary Adamansing.
I'm just going to yield my time to Mr. McLeod. We're switching spots.
Cloud.
The other MP McLeod. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for presentation and presenting in front of us today. I want to first off say that I'm quite pleased with the amount of progress that we've made in terms of getting the Aboriginal governments back to the table, negotiating tables in the Northwest Territories. I think the way of the future for us is towards moving towards self-governance, and having 10 sets of discussions all going at the same time is really refreshing to see, and also the idea of bringing in 4 MSRs to review some of the more challenging negotiations is something that I think is going to bring some good results. I had the opportunity to meet with Mary Simon the other day on her studies that she's doing, and we had a very good discussion. I'm looking at the document, the sub-document, and we have one area that we have money, but I wanted to flag something, and I've said this before, so it's probably not going to be new to you. We are studying suicides across Canada, mostly in our smaller Indigenous communities, and in the North, it's a huge issue, as you know. On the average, with my own math using Stats Canada information, we're estimating in the 3 territories we're having a suicide every 8 to 10 days. And since we started our suicide study a little over a year ago, we've had over 50 in the North. But when we start looking at the breakout of the money, like the $8.4 billion that was announced for Aboriginal people, we don't qualify for any of those dollars. There's no real carve-out for us under that. The post-secondary education money that's being announced, that we don't qualify for that. The money that Jane Philpott has announced through health for the younger children, we don't qualify for that. The Jordan Principle doesn't apply to us. The housing money we've never received as Aboriginal governments, except for this time around for the Inuvialuit, which was good. Hopefully that trend is going to continue. We talk about culture and recreation centers. Our communities, Aboriginal communities, don't qualify for that because we don't have reserves. So almost everything you announce doesn't apply to us. Yet we have communities that are full of Aboriginal people, but they're public communities. So I'm hoping that we're going to try to find a way through that so that it's fair. We are our fears are being confirmed through the Auditor General. He's reviewed our community, said we're not meeting all the infrastructure needs. We're falling really below what needs to be funded. The Aboriginal government claims that have been settled, the Auditor General has reviewed and said we're not meeting our obligations. So we've got a lot of work to do. And as I look at the document, the sub-document here that we have in front of us, there's going to be some work done on our regional environmental study, which I'm really happy to see moving forward finally. However, the breakout under Vote 1 and Vote 10 really doesn't seem to be fair. So as you've stated, Vote 1 is for the department, which is over $900,000. Over 50% of the money is going to go to the government, to the department. Then there's $850,000 that'll Vote 10. Could you tell me what the department's going to do with the $900,000? Why does it need more than half of it? Are they going to do the bulk of the study? And is the $850,000 going to be available for the Aboriginal governments territorial governments? It's not
The
clear to me.
On the Arctic regional. You're referring, Mr. McLeod, just to the regional environmental studies?
To Arctic Regional Environmental Studies.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll get Paul to just explain how that breaks down.
So in answer to your question, Mr. McLeod, the money is going to be used to actually rent venues for the workshops, as well as to pay for travel for individuals, for the community members to come to the workshops. So it's not money for the bureaucracy on Vote 1. It's actually...
Wages out of that, are we?
Right. No. It all benefits the communities. And then the Vote 10 is for helping them prepared before coming into the workshops. So all of that money is to the benefit of the Northerners.
So I guess the biggest question that I'm trying to get at here, all this will be spent in the north. This is not over 50% of it going to be spent in Ottawa. And, okay. I got another question on another budget line regarding emergency management service providers. Over half of what you're presenting here to be spent will be for this budget line, and I'm wondering if that also applies in the north. Funding to reimburse First Nations and emergency management service providers.
That was an emergency. We only talked about the big ones, like
This
Fort
is the
Mac
biggest.
and
This
whatever.
is over 50% of your budget that you're presenting.
We can look it up, but it's about replenishing money that was spent on an emergency. So if you want to let me know about any emergency in the Northwest Territories, we can get you the funds for that specific event.
So are you saying we could qualify for the same kind of monies? We got tons of emergencies.
That emergency management money is based on events, and
On reserve or off reserve?
on reserve primarily, but if there is events that we need to contribute to, we do, and we fund. It's a big ticket item because we often have to do it after the fact. We have some base funding, but when the events occur, we actually fund them and we replenish based on the events. So if there is events in the north,
So this is already spent.
by and large, it is already spent. Yes.
And it's just replenishing.
Okay.
And Mike, I think one of the other things to say is that as we move to self-government in Northwest Territories, a lot of your concerns will be dealt with as we are dealing with the new Indigenous governments. So, this on and off reserve and all of the things that have been around housing, and as in the last budget, you as Northerners did a great job with the infrastructure minister and the finance minister explaining that housing in the north was different and these technical things of on and off reserve don't apply in the north. And so the money that we were able to give to the Inuvialuit or the other land claim organization, the Inuit organizations, has been ring-fenced for that because of the terrific input that Northern MPs provided.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it. We're moving on to the second round, which is 5 minutes, and that's going to MP Yurdega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Minister, thank you for appearing before our committee today. As always, we appreciate you coming to our committee. The Parliament Budget Office just released a report less than an hour ago. That report says your ministry has frozen $100 million in funding. Minister, I have sat on this committee and heard the desperation from Indigenous people every committee meeting. I have heard your government make countless promises. Why is this money not being spent when there is clearly a desperate need for it?
I haven't read the report. I know that there is the only money that, or pretty well the only money that lapses in our department is money that's set aside to settle claims or in lawsuits that gets rolled into the following year. So there are, that we aren't allowed to spend on anything else. But we do roll it forward such that that claim money is sitting there for when the claim is settled. So I don't know that report, but I know that there were previous reports that I was very happy to clarify, because this isn't money that could be spent on something else. So it is, do you have a update?
Are we referring to frozen allotments?
Yes.
Correct. As the minister quite rightly stated, monies are earmarked for defined purposes, and when you have a frozen allotment, that's the basis for ensuring that that money is then reprofiled into future purposes, so when those obligations need to be paid.
Well,
and that's for a number of purposes, such as contaminated sites, residential schools payments, as are just two out-of-court settlements. As just just a couple of examples.
So residential, like for example, the residential school money has to sit there until these last claims are settled. You can't spend it on infrastructure or spend it on anything else. It has to be sitting there so that the money is there when the claim's settled.
it really doesn't make sense to me, because the money was budgeted for specific allocations, and it's now being frozen. So I want to know why it was frozen. I mean, you made an explanation, well, this program, that program, and these, there's excuses, but I want to know why.
Yeah, it's because it is for a specific purpose. So you try and anticipate how many claims will be settled in a given year. And then if they're not settled, then that frozen money gets moved into the next year for when the claim is settled. But it has to be sitting there for the claimant, because that's what what the money was allocated for. It can't be used for anything else.
If I may say, it's the technical means for managing the fiscal framework to moving money from one year to another in terms of frozen allotments.
Okay. I have noticed that there is no movement on Nutrition North in the supplementary estimates. I realize that your consultation process just finished on February 8th, and I would like to know when we can expect these major changes to come into play, and can we expect anything in the next budget, or will it be in the supplementary estimates next year?
The consultations were really interesting in terms of the kinds of things that people are talking about in a broken program, whereas people just feel that they used to be able to feed their families and now they can't. And so with the Parliamentary Secretary, Yvonne Jones, we are now looking at how we respond to the individual needs that are very different in northern Manitoba than they are in Goose Bay or in Iqaluit. How do we deal with the reality of the costs of bringing in healthy, nutritious food, but also community after community wants the ability for harvesters and fishermen to be able to feed their families in a traditional way. And so how do we get back to being able to have the hunters and fishermen able to have the boats and motors and the snow machines, the ammunition, the kinds of things that allow them to feed their families in a traditional way. And this is what we've heard coast to coast to coast. And so it will be with Northerners that we will design the next program. We can't do that ourselves, and it's going to have to be done in full collaboration with Northerners.
The questioning now moves to MP Ananda Sangaring.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Madam Minister, and colleagues. Thank you for joining us. With respect to the emergency fund, the replenishment of the emergency fund, can you give us a sense as to the dollars that we spend on an emergency that takes place in an Indigenous community versus non-Indigenous communities? So in a maybe out of your department, but can you give us a sense of what that dollar that the federal government spends on both, and if there is an actual disparity between that spending?
I'd love to get back to you on that in terms of how that works. I know in talking to the communities during the Fort Mac fire, I mean, I was very proud that our department in the regional office there was able to forward money to communities to be able to help them, particularly with some of their people that actually worked in Fort Mac or worked in Edmonton, what they needed to do on transportation. So quite often our department is able to front end load a community with the money right away for an emergency, and then we then have to figure out how we replenish or get that money back. But I
guess my question really is that if there is a disparity between the dollars that we spend.
The deputy would.
There is a fully integrated security management system that starts from the federal and the provinces and municipalities if you're governed by a provincial government. The portion that INAC take is to actually do the same thing and be plugged into that cascading. So it stems from the same type of emergency management system. So the parity is the same, because more often than not, with the agreements we have with the provinces, often the provinces will front load the bill and then we will replenish later. In the specific of these, we work directly with providers, but we did it particularly for Fort Mac and a few others. We do it in conjunction with the activity that is done on the ground, either by municipality, province, chapeauté by the federal government. So the quick answer to your question is that we operate in parity and we provide the same level of services.
Yeah, if you could also just confirm that at a later date, that would be good. I am very curious to know if there is a disparity.
Certainly when you're on the ground during these emergencies, it is the province that is quite often taking the lead. And again, this on reserve, off reserve disappears at the time. It is about doing what needs to be done, and but we will find out what that looks like.
We will send you a description of that.
Thank you. With respect to childhood claims litigation, so if I understand this correctly, this is very specific to the 60 scoop and the liability that's likely to come about because of the decision of the Ontario Court decision. I'm a little curious why this kind of work would not have been done during the litigation process itself. So when when the government enters into litigation, I would have thought that there would be some analysis of what that liability would be, rather than fighting it for 10 years. And if this is one of these instances where we're kind of doing the work now, to me, it almost seems as a futile exercise going to court and fighting it without really knowing what the liability is from the outset.
Yeah, I must admit, Gary, that was. I was surprising how secretive a lot of these claims are in terms of people, us having no idea how many people would be in a class, or those kinds of things that when they're in pure litigation, that isn't clear. But as we get to negotiation and we are prepared to go to the table, then this research needs to be done. But it also needs to be done in what actually are the claimants asking for, and particularly in court, people can only be asking for money or land or whatever. At the negotiating table, it is about the structure of an apology. It is about language and culture. It is about how you would build back what was lost in terms of satisfying what the claimants are asking for.
Very short, 20 minutes.
So would it, with respect to any other litigation that's pending that are of similar nature, would it not be prudent for us to maybe look at a different approach to this as opposed to fighting it out and then saying we're going to go to the negotiating table?
You're absolutely right. I don't want to be fighting anything out. I want to get to the table on as many claims as we can. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes two to get out of court. And we actually would love to be able to get
Thank you.
a lot of litigation, but we really do, on these childhood claims, are doing everything we can to get these out of court. And
Thank you, Minister. Moving on to MP Arnold Verison.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the Minister for being here. today. I think I'll just continue right on in the same vein there. The system in Canada is set up as such that the whole legal system is, if you aren't going to appeal a decision, you therefore accept the decision and have to abide by the ruling. And we had Cindy Blackstock here just last week telling us that you weren't appealing tribunal decisions, but you weren't seeming to implement their decisions either. And this seems to be an ongoing trend in the same vein as the Transparency Act being the law of the land, and you're just not enforcing it. So I guess I have a significant struggle with the basic rule of democracy is the rule of law. These are, if we voted in the House of Commons to suspend the rule of law in this country, I still don't think that particular vote would be a legitimate vote, because the rule of law is a basic fundamental part of democracy. And so I'm struggling with that. It seems to be an ongoing trend of yours. So that's just probably more of a comment. Cindy Blackstock was here the other day asking about Jordan's Principle, and I see in the subs here that we have $1 million on Jordan's Principle. I know that her organization was asking for $155 million on Jordan's Principle, and you made an announcement of $382 million. Can you just explain to me the $1 million that we see in the subs, how that works? There might be a good explanation for it. I just not sure how. We have several different numbers running around. Last month there was like a $5 million number. Can you just, I guess, try to line that up for me?
So, in the tribunal decision, there are two parts to it. One is the child welfare system, and the other is Jordan's Principle. Mm-hmm. As you know, Minister Philpott manages Jordan's Principle in terms of the health care needs. We get a small amount of that in order to deal with housing, assisted living, the kinds of things that would be more on quality of life as opposed to actual health care. And so, so we made available this year, as you know, the money for Jordan's Principle in the 382, I think. Yep, in over 3 years. 88 was made available this year, and out of that, we have identified 3,200 kids that now will get care that weren't getting it before broadening that definition. So it is about us identifying the children and making sure that they get the care they need. And so that's where the ramping up takes place, because that definition was only changed July 1st, right? So it used to be that it had to be multiple disabilities, multiple agencies. Now, just any child with a disability will be able to no longer have this sort of fight between provinces and federal government as to who pays, and we have put that money in place. Yeah. The 155 that Dr. Blackstock talked about is for the combination of both Jordan's Principle and the child welfare. And so we're very pleased that this year we've made available 197.7, and that there'll be, as of the next fiscal year, 246.6 available for the combination of the changes to the child welfare program as well as Jordan's Principle. But we also know we have to change the system, because still too much money is going to lawyers to apprehend children.
Yeah,
we want more money into communities so these kids don't end up with the system at all.
Yes, I guess like staying out of court is a laudable goal, but how do you square that with the fundamental principle of the rule of law in Canada?
Well, the tribunal's not a court of law. It didn't put any numbers on it. They have agreed that they know we're serious about making these changes, and so we are doing that. I think in an intentional and very meaningful way, working. One of the things that was interesting that's in the
Thank you,
in
Minister.
the subs.
Thank you. Moving on to MP Fisher.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
And
Well-
thank you very much. Happy to fill in. Thank you, Minister, to you and your team for being here. Minister, you know I have the pleasure of representing the beautiful riding of Dartmouth Cole Harbour in Nova Scotia, and I know you know the region and the riding specifically. I thank you for your visits in the past, and I look forward to hosting you again. I wonder if it's okay if I get parochial or stay on the line of being parochial. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about how the estimates that you've presented today to this committee will impact the communities in Atlantic Canada. You know, I know that the needs of region to region vary greatly in this huge country, but can you specifically tell me a little bit more about your plans for Atlantic Canada in particular?
So I think you know, Mr. Fisher, that water systems have been a big problem in Atlantic Canada, and that we hopefully are able to look at the one that was in terms of Potlatech, and the one that was very noticeable in the news. There's let me just see, but I have a very handy dandy sheet on Atlantic Canada. So 23 projects in 16 communities on water and wastewater, 72 projects and 11.5 million on housing, education facilities 7.7 million, culture and recreation 3.9 million, energy sustainability and connectivity 1.1, fundamental community infrastructure 6.7. So I'm happy to give you that, and there's also, because of Labrador, 4 million in Inuit housing. So but I'd be happy to, and we'll break it down for you in that's what we're hoping to do. And what we're hoping to do for everybody here is very shortly be able to release the water and wastewater projects that are happening coast to coast to coast.
Thank you, Minister. I would be pleased if the chair would permit that, to have that distributed to the committee, or me specifically, if no one else would like to have that. Do I have any time left?
You have 3 minutes.
I would be pleased. I noticed Mr. McLeod seemed like he was just ramping up, and I'd be pleased to provide him with my remaining 3 minutes.
MP Michael McLeod.
Yeah, thank you. I had a couple questions that I wasn't able to ask last time. Regarding the money for self-government or for specific claims and land claims, self-government agreements, I know in the Northwest Territories we have some governments that are quite anxious to move forward, and some of them have settled claims, self-government claims, almost 8 years ago, 9 years ago, and with the previous government just got stalled and nothing moved forward, and it was a legal battle for years and years. So I was quite pleased that you chose to intervene and try to untangle the legal mess that we're in and commit to a collaboration approach to try to resolve it. And I think we're moving forward. We're not moving forward fast enough for any of us, I think. But I'm just wondering if some of the money that was committed here in this request is for the Northwest Territories and some of those governments that are working to it.
Short answer, about 1 minute.
Go ahead.
There are two amounts for the North. One is for the Indigenous languages for the Yukon self-governing nations that you'll see in Sub-C. And then there's about $6 million that's moving from a contributions to grant for the Nunavut land claims settlement. So there's about $7 million that you're seeing through the Sub-C.
But the rest is in the regular budget, Mike. It's not in the subs. It's not in Sub-C.
No, but I was asking about this one. Okay.
About 50 seconds.
Okay, my next question was regarding the languages, and maybe you answered it. There's $1.6 million for French and Indigenous for the North. Can you break that out for me? What is going for the French and what is going for Indigenous?
It's all Indigenous.
Ours is
all Indigenous. The
Indigenous.
French is, you'll see
But
in
mostly
the Canadian Heritage.
Well, it says French on it.
Right, that is, it's a horizontal label for across government ministries, but the amount allocated for our ministry is just the Indigenous languages.
So that's for all 3 territories?
It's mainly in the Yukon,
For the
actually.
Yukon.
What are we
It's
doing
Yukon
wrong over
First
here that
Nations.
we're not...
Yeah. Well, we'll find out
Can you provide me the breakout for the whole
Yeah, and
the
we'll
whole
find out.
investment in
And also,
languages?
as we began out of Budget 2016, language and culture becomes part of schools and all of those things, and we will be building language and culture into early childhood and into other areas. But we'll find out what's happening in Northwest Territories for sure, Mike.
Thank you. And we're going to wrap up the questioning with MP Romeo Saganash. You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. Well, that allows me to clarify one thing. In the cross-examination of the federal officials on the motions of non-compliance that happened, there's a lot of information that stemmed from that. One of them is, as we know, 382 million was announced over 3 years for Jordan Principle, and as of January 17, 2016, over 5 million was spent, and an additional 6 million was approved. Can you confirm for me that all funds that are not used are sent back to consolidated revenue?
It will be reprofiled. This is Jordan's Principle money, and it needs to be spent on Jordan's Principle, and it will be spent on Jordan's Principle. So because
But
it's
if
only...
not, but if not, what happens? Is it sent back to
It goes into
revenue?
Jordan's. It goes into next year's money for Jordan's Principle. So as we identify more and more children,
That's not what your official said in court, under oath. We find that in the cross-examination of your officials. They
So-
confirm that all funds that are unused by the end of fiscal year will be removed from the fund and transferred to Canada's consolidated revenue.
well, that's it.
That is technically correct if it's not reprofiled, but it's, so that is
Health
that is
Canada.
correct. But if it's reprofiled, then it's moved into future years. And so there's a process of reprofiling, which is working with the central agencies, the Department of Finance and the Treasury Board, in order to move that forward. So technically the answer is correct that if it's not reprofiled, it goes back to the CRF, but it is being reprofiled.
And so that 382 over 3 years is 382 over 3 years, and that is dedicated to Jordan's Principle.
40 seconds. The other thing that we learned in this case is that Canada has not taken any further action to implement the order citing the need to engage with First Nations. And you use that word a lot in your speaking notes. But the officials also confirmed that Canada has no formal definition of engagement. If that is the case, I wouldn't want to engage with you, madam.
Or to be engaged, yes. It's a,
What does it mean for you,
what,
is the question.
engagement is what is a recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership. It means how do we move, co-creating policies, co-creating a budget. How do we move on this? So one of the things that we did that I was mentioning just now is that in the child welfare reforms, one of the things that we did do is make available $100,000 for each of the child welfare agencies to determine their needs with $25,000 each and $75,000 each to build a language and culture program for their clients. So this is a kind of engagement where you actually say, there's this money on offer. Tell us what you need so that we can build a program based on your needs going forward.
Thank you so much. We've gone over. I want to thank the minister for taking time to come to committee. If you wish to remain, we could probably find the time to keep you. Open invitation to come back to committee. Thank you very much. We're going to suspend for 5 minutes, and we will be back to questioning with the department after that.
For sure.
And we'll take care of the votes after that, and we'll be done at 10:45. So we have been joined by additional staff from the department, Ms. Isaac and Mr. Smith. Welcome. And we're going to start off the questioning at the 7-minute round with MP Michael McLeod.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I was expecting a little bit of a presentation, but I guess we're going to go directly into the questions.
Beg your pardon, that's true. There is an opportunity to do a 10-minute presentation, if you wish.
Chair, with your permission, maybe walk you through the deck that we have provided you because it's
That
summarized.
is completely my mistake, sorry.
Okay, so if you're
please
okay
go
with that.
ahead with the deck that you have.
And I will ask Mr. Topple to do that for us. Thank you.
Is it?
On such a good round with the questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what the department has tried to do in order to provide more clarity with regards to the supplementary estimates is to prepare this PowerPoint presentation in order to sort of address potential anticipated questions. And so what you have in front of us, I'll say, moving to slide 2, is essentially how much we have from Parliament been given in terms of authorities to date, and then what these supplementary estimates provides us. And so what you will see on slide 2 is essentially that net of transfers and other adjustments that we are seeking parliamentary authority for an additional $92 million to take us to the $99.5 billion amount. Moving to slide 3 is essentially breaking down in a summary way the amounts that we are requesting by key initiative, and also trying to provide you with how it relates by vote, because as the minister noted in her remarks, vote 1 is for certain purposes vis-a-vis vote 10. Vote 10, as you know, is for grants and contributions for recipients, versus vote 1, which is for salaries and operating dollars. So page 4 was an attempt to try to deal with questions that were posed by members in terms of what are some rationale for the $56 million in additional emergency-related costs beyond what we have in the department's existing reference levels for these costs for emergencies, and the minister cited a number of examples in terms of events for which, as the minister noted, we had already reimbursed, and now we are seeking parliamentary authority for reimbursement in order to cover those costs from a departmental basis and ensure that we're within our parliamentary authorities that you have granted us. Moving on to page 5, just tried to provide you with a bit of a picture, a visual of what are some of those costs that are being reimbursed for, and this is an example of trying to build back Saskatchewan post the flooding in terms of some of the homes. You will note in this one that this is an example of a home that's without a basement, so to deal with what is the reality of that ground, whereas the ones that were in Saskatchewan pre the flood all had basements and therefore suffered from the flooding. Moving on to page 6, this is a request for additional funds related to Operation Return Home. This is a multi-year engagement in order to ensure that we repair, rebuild, and reestablish the 4 Manitoba First Nations that were unfortunately significantly impacted by the severe flooding in 2011. And we are anticipating a return of all the evacuees to the 4 First Nation communities by 2018-19. What you have then following page 6 is photographs of examples of the progress that are being made across those 4 First Nation communities in terms of providing that necessary infrastructure so that when the evacuees do return, they've got their homes, they've got their roads, they've got their water treatment plants and the sewage systems consistent with the community so that then when they come back, it's functioning. Page 8 is essentially a request for $10 million to ensure the continued negotiations between Canada, the province of Ontario, and 7 William Treaties First Nations, which is essentially consistent with the minister's direction to not litigate but negotiate out of the Alderville litigation, which was filed in 1992. Page 9, I think, was adequately addressed, I believe, based on the questions between members and the minister with regards to what was the purpose for the $3 million for Indigenous childhood claims litigation. As the minister stated, it's essentially for research and analysis to ensure that when we do negotiate, that we are dealing with appropriate class sizes and we rectify appropriately the wrongs that were done in the past. Page 10 is some background on what is essentially the purposes for the Arctic Regional Environmental Studies. And you will note on page 11 some examples of community engagements in the past in similar areas related to environmental studies. And then finally, I believe this is essentially the provision of languages for the 11 self-governing Yukon First Nations that member Mr. McLeod had raised, and that is consistent with their self-governing agreements. And that's it for the presentation. Happy to address, along with my colleagues, any questions that you may have.
Yeah, well, thank you for the presentation. So we're going to go into our 7-minute round, starting off with Michael McLeod.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have 2 lines of questioning. The first one is an ongoing concern that I have about consistent funding for Aboriginal people across the board. I think I've raised it a number of times with you, but I wanted to get some reassurance that the department is investing in Aboriginal people in a fair way, whether it's on reserve, off reserve, south of the border, whether it's in the communities in the southern provinces or communities in the north. Now, explain to me how your mandate allows you to do that. Indigenous Affairs seems to be focused and mandated only on reserves and reserves in the south. The reserves in my riding keep telling me that they don't qualify for unreserved funding, even though they're federal reserves. And they're being told that they should go to the territorial government, but they're federal reserves. We don't qualify, as I pointed out, to a whole slew of program announcements that were provided by this government. So can you just explain to me how we do that without actually going to an audit to see how fair the funding is? Is the people in my riding being provided the same money per capita as other jurisdictions?
I will start, and I'll turn to my colleague, Mr. Topol, on that. There is different entry point for actually providing funding for Indigenous people, and it is quite true that for the Indian bands that are governed by the Indian Act, there is a certain type of funding agreement which is quite formula-driven and is similar depending on various size of population. There are other entry points depending if there is, a land claim agreement or a self-government agreement, or if Indigenous people live off reserve or in urban areas. But there are programming to actually support them. With respect to being able to give you a specific picture as to whether or not exactly the same dollars are going to everybody, because in the case of the North, there are different arrangements with the territories. It wouldn't be adequate to actually give a identical breakdown per capita as you're asking. But what we could do for you is providing you with all the funding that goes, particularly to Northwest Territory or Nordic 60 in general, and through which entry door, if you so wish, that funding is flowed. I don't know, Paul, if you want to add anything?
No, I think
Yes, I would very much appreciate that. I've been trying to, and I've been struggling with the issue, to be able to confirm to my constituents that we're being funded in a fair manner and on par as other communities. I'm not getting that. I'm not getting that we are receiving equal funding. I've talked to the territorial government. They've reassured me that there is really no special arrangement. There is no special mention of Aboriginal responsibility in their funding formulas. So I would really appreciate if you could try to tell me, and maybe through a graph, how we are funded on par. I'd appreciate if we could dig down a little deeper, maybe not right now, but as we move forward. In all fairness, I have to demonstrate that I'm representing my communities, and funding is an important part. If we're not getting housing money when everybody else is getting Aboriginal housing money, if we're not getting the health, if we're not getting education money, all these different things that are being provided across the country, and we don't qualify in the north, like Nunavut is a good example too, that they don't get the same kind of monies that the reserves are getting. So I'd like to have further information if you could provide that to me. In this supplementary request, you've pointed out that there's a $1.8 million for the studies that we're finally going to undertake. I think the request and desire to move forward on that's been there for a while. But the overall anticipated budget is $19 million over 5 years. Is there a plan attached to that? Can I see something that is going to give me some information on when the money's going to be rolled out and what areas? Do we have a budget that breakout? Do we have an action plan? This has generated a lot of interest, and a lot of questions are coming my way, and I'd really like to be able to be more specific.
We have 2 minutes left.
Thank you for the question. So this money is going to be used to help assess the potential environmental impacts of future oil and gas activity in 3 regions of the Arctic. So the Beaufort Basin, Baffin Bay and Davis Strait, Kivalik, Kitimyat, and the Arctic islands of Nunavut. And so the funds will be used to support a Baffin Bay and Davis Strait strategic environmental assessment and the Beaufort Regional Strategic Environmental Assessment. And so these assessments will form a significant part of the science-based review of the decision to designate the Canadian Arctic waters as indefinitely off-limits to new offshore oil and gas licenses as per the United States-Canada Joint Arctic Leaders Statement of December 20th.
I see that in the document. I recognize that. That's not what I'm asking you. Okay. I'm asking you for an action plan with a breakout. You got 3 areas of study. How much of that is coming forward? And out of the $1.8 million that's being requested now, does that have to be spent before the end of March? Is that going to be a carryover? It
does, and if it doesn't, we will seek reprofile with the support of the central agencies for the future so that it does not get lost.
And that's yes to an action plan?
As for the action plan, we can come back to you with some details with regards to what is the breakout of the work plan associated with that spending of the $19 million.
I'd like to see the whole work plan if I could, sure, but more specifically to the Western Arctic.
Okay.
We will do that for you.
We will do that.
All right, moving on, we have MP Yurdega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reality is the carbon tax will drive up the costs in remote northern communities. The fuel that is needed to heat their homes, create electricity, and ship in food will add to the cost of items Northerners are already struggling to afford. In some instances, costs are already rising as goods are being shipped out of provinces that already have a carbon tax. So Has your department calculated how the increased cost of shipping and electricity will affect program delivery?
We haven't calculated it right now, but we are working with Environment Canada to make sure that as part of the Pan-Canadian framework that the impact is being assessed, particularly for Northerners.
And if I may say, and that is being done also together with ITK to ensure that we take into account traditional knowledge in terms of the impacts of climate change in those areas as well.
So so there's no allowances in the estimates. So is that correct?
In our department estimates, no, but there is activity through the Pan-Canadian framework that would be with Environment Canada.
Referring back to the Nutrition North program, and it'll be a significant cost to families that will have to pay these costs. So in reality, if it's not in the formula and in estimates, a lot of these people will be actually getting less of a subsidy to cover the costs. Is that correct?
Well, I don't think that there would be necessarily for this year a direct link, but part of the reform that we're planning to do with Nutrition North, as the minister said, is to make sure that we engage and factor in what are the costs of having nutritious, healthy food provided to Northerners, including harvesting capacity in the North.
So there's no allowances for the extra costs for in the Nutrition North program?
There was some improvement and additional of new communities for this year, and we are in the process of engaging to actually reform the program.
So what kind of increase are we seeing in the Nutrition North program? Is there extra money in for the additional communities added to the program?
Yes, there is, and there's also, the program also has an escalator to make sure that it actually keep up with the cost of living. So through those two things, injection of money, additional of new communities, plus the escalator, we have injected funding for this year, and we're in the process of reforming, as the minister said.
Okay. Moving on to the supplementary estimate C, requesting an allocation of $1.3 million for promoting the safe use, development, conservation, and protection of the North's natural resources and promoting scientific development. But I know just 2 months ago, the government banned oil and gas development in the Arctic without consulting anyone. I hope this is not a pattern. So how has the department engaged Northerners in natural resource conservation and development?
Thank you for the question. It's essentially through this supplementary estimates item that we just referenced that I was talking to a member, Mr. McLeod, which is through these community-based workshops and doing and together with them these studies in order to assess the environmental aspect in these kind of pristine areas.
I realize that, but I'm talking about how have they in the past? Is the money moving forward? Is that going to promote more consultation?
That is the purpose.
That is the purpose.
Okay. Okay, what specific resource development activities will receive funding under the requested allocation?
You said resource development activity?
Yes.
Per se?
Yes. Resource development activities.
Yeah, it's not the purpose. The purpose is to engage on the impact. It's not the purpose of that particular funding is not to actually fund resource development activity per se.
So it's just for consultation only.
That's correct.
Okay. So the we see a lot of issues in the North regarding housing, and we're going to see a significant increase in cost with the implementation of the carbon tax. So I'm just curious: is the carbon tax part of the equation moving forward when it comes to getting homes built in the north? Because it's very expensive, it's just not only material in, it's also transporting skilled workers. There's many things involved. So is there any provisions allotted for that?
So what we are striving for is budgeting for homes in order to ensure that we address the costs to get the costs of homes delivered into the north in order to deal with the overcrowding situation.
But we look at the cost per home, say it's $200,000, whatever it may be. Now, with the potential, with the taxes, the carbon tax, say it's going to cost an additional $20,000, $30,000. So when you're looking at building a couple thousand homes, if there's no money allotted for that, there's going to be less homes built. So we want to reassure Northerners that they're going to get the homes that was promised by the government.
The ones that are being provided for this year have already been costed, and we're going to be reassessing if there is higher costs that are needed for building housings. But for this year, covered by those estimates, we know what the costs are, and we are providing that level of funding.
Thank you. Questioning now moves to MP Saganash.
Thanks again, Madam Chair. And I want to get back to my last question to the Minister. And Paul, I think you gave a technical response to my question because the officials that were cross-examined, again, in that Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, advised very clearly that any funds allocated for Jordan's Principle that remain unspent at the end of the fiscal year will not be returned to the fund. That was pretty clear. And you responded that that's technically true unless we reprofile, right? Could you give the committee first a clear explanation of how that works? And if at the end of that reprofiling, the fund will remain in Jordan's Principle commitments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agnash, for the question. So technically, it's an exercise that we do across all programs that have defined purposes, and Jordan's Principle is an example of it, whereby over the course of the fiscal year, we examine the degree of expenditures associated with the budget allotment, and then depending upon what's the degree of usage, then we will then engage with the central agencies in terms of making a request for reprofiling some months before the end of the fiscal year to ensure that that dedicated pot is used for its intended purposes in the future years. So that requires a justification process, and if they approve that, that usually requires Minister of Finance approval. Well, then you see related to a frozen allotment, as was noted in terms of a previous question from a member at this committee, and then it gets reallocated. And then what tends to happen is that then when the public accounts happens and gets publishes, you will sometimes notice huge amounts of lapses, and that is due to the frozen allotments that have forced those lapses. But what the public accounts lapses don't indicate is the reprofiles that have transpired to keep that money going. So there's always, when you look at the gross lapse in the public accounts, you have to understand that there are two aspects to it. There is the planned lapse, and then there is the actual net lapse for which the spending did not go. So, for example, last year, the gross lapse for the department was $900 million. But then when you start taking into account all those reprofiled amounts, the amount that was actually net was $900,000. So that's just a technical response to your question about ensuring that dedicated pots of money are always managed to ensure that they are available in future years for its intended purposes.
Okay, that's pretty clear for me. J'aimerais revenir sur l'autre question que j'avais pour la ministre.
I have another question for the minister. and I will put it to Ms. Laurado. It has been confirmed, and I hear this often from the minister, that she will make commitments towards the Métis, Inuit, and First Nations. Yet the 2 or 3 people who were cross-examined at the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal both seem to be saying that the government has no definition for what commitment, or rather engagement, actually means. Is that true? Well, do we have a policy which specifically defines engagement? Well, in French, we use the word mobilisation. What it basically means is to go into a community and to find out exactly from the people on the ground what the needs are. It's more than a consultation. A consultation can be written. Engagement is vaster, and there's more back and forth to find out exactly what the specific needs are of a community or a group or of an autonomous government. So the definition of an engagement is a meaningful conversation on specific needs on a specific topic. We did this in the aftermath of the inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women. And it is a method we are using more and more. You have surely heard about the fact that we are engaged in various activities in Northern Canada and Southern Canada. But as I said, it's a more inclusive approach, and which requires a presence on the ground and a back and forth discussion. You've surely noted that the Prime Minister has also said that he would establish priorities with the groups. And that's a form of engagement. It's to find out what the needs are in order to set priorities. What I understood from the Prime Minister is that he committed to having a new relationship with Indigenous persons based on the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. He said that he would make this a priority. In this declaration, there is the notion of free, prior, and informed consent. So what the minister has just said and what you have just told me, do you believe that the way you have defined engagement reflects what the UN Declaration says?
Si je comprends bien la question.
If I understand the question, you are asking whether what the minister and the Prime Minister said meets the declaration standard. Yes, we believe that's the case.
We're now moving the questioning to MP. 12 seconds.
OK. Lorsqu'on prend cet engagement politique,
when a political engagement or commitment is made, how do policies follow to actually concretely implement the policy? Is it the minister who tells the department what to do, or vice versa? I believe that you should put that question to the minister.
On to MP Resnick.
I'm probably going to sound like a broken record over the next couple of months as my broken rib, thanks to my Conservative colleagues, heals up. I've never had one before, so if I grimace, it's just because of my rib situation. But having said that, I'm no doctor and I'm no financial expert, but I was looking at page 2, and the operating expenses versus the total budgetary expenses for 2016-2017. And it's close to 10% for the operating expenditures of the department. And just in relation to other departments, is that around equal, or, and I know different departments are, but a comparable department to the Department of Indigenous and Northern Affairs, would that be consistent with the spending in terms of operating expenditures? And I would imagine offices, employees, and other such things. Is that consistent amongst government in like departments?
Thank you very much for the question. So Vote 1, operating expenditures, is not all, in fact, it's not all for the department's purposes. It's actually also for monies for contaminated sites and for residential schools. So the actual portion of the operating expenditures of the $1 billion allocated, that's actually $500 million is for the department's salaries and its own expenditures. So that $500 million as a percentage of the total budgetary expenditures comes to around 7%. And as the minister noted, if you use a benchmark of typically of other departments and organizations of a comparable size, around 15%, we believe that we actually measure very favorably in that regard.
I've been hearing from communities a lot of frustration at the speed that the department makes decisions. Is that a resourcing issue in terms of not having enough staff to make decisions for communities in a timely manner, or is it something else within the department? Timing is the concern with the communities. They do applications or they go through processes. Another part of that is that the processes are cumbersome and more cumbersome than dealing with other federal agencies, for example, FedNor. I know a lot of First Nations in my riding deal with FedNor often, and they much prefer to deal with FedNor rather than dealing with the bureaucracy at INAC.
A couple of things on that. I think the department is more than adequately resources. We are able to face what is required to be done. One of the things that traditionally sometimes created a bit of a pressure in terms of allocating resources was when in the year some of the money was provided to the department per se, particularly on big ticket items like Vote 10. Last year, with the budget of 2016, there was a tremendous effort that was made by the central agency to give us access much earlier in the year to that money, which allowed us in turn to actually be able to fan it out more quickly to First Nation and to amend the contribution agreement more quickly to be able to give them the security of what funding they would be getting, particularly on infrastructure. And I'm happy to say that as of today, we're close to 98% of all the funding is already committed to the community, and they know exactly what they're going to be getting. So a lot of effort have been made in that direction. Is it perfect? The discussion on new fiscal relationship may actually open up doors to actually make it even more efficient down the road. But I am proud to say that we've made improvement in that respect, because in previous years, sometimes we would only get the bulk of the money in Sub-C, which would have been today, while if you look at the Sub-C of this year compared to the year before, it's really things that would have emerged during the year, as opposed to be a big chunk of the money that we actually were promised in the previous budget. So the central agency, I think Finance and Treasury Board, should be commended for that.
So I'm told by Madam Chair that I have 2 minutes. I've agreed to share them with my colleague from La Belle Province.
Merci, Mr. Rosnack. Écoutez, peut-être pour...
To follow in the same vein as my colleague, I would like to come back to the supplementary estimate C, and on page 2. So it is February 23rd, the end of the fiscal year is near, and out of the total budget of $9.5 billion, please give me an update on expenditures to the end of January. So how much money has been spent from the budget? Well, expenditures are well along. Within the department, there is a fairly rigorous process. Every month with the management team, we review expenditures. This is an important exercise, especially in light of the fact that in Vote 10, there's a lot of infrastructure money. So we're tracking on a regular basis the state of projects, and we make sure that if any projects are falling behind, that the money is being spent on projects that are ready to go. So I can tell you with a fairly high level of confidence that by the end of the year, we will have spent all of our funds, all of the funds that we were forecast to spend. Do you expect to end up with a potential surplus? Well, the only surplus that I expect is the reprofiling items I'd mentioned, including settlement claims and residential schools. But in terms of the money earmarked for this year, the greatest risk I faced is that I make sure I don't spend more than I can or more than the money I have. But I'm confident that the plane is going to land smoothly. Thanks for the question.
To the 5-minute round, and we start with MP Kathy McLeod.
Mr. Rierson very kindly agreed to give me 1 minute of his time. And so just a quick follow-up, certainly you talked about public accounts, and I think it's really unfortunate that it gets stated the way it is, because it often leads to these headlines that $1 billion it was not spent for communities. And truly, I think a simple change to that is this was the true amount unspent, and this is the amount that has been reprofiled. It's not a big change, and to be quite frank, I'm not sure why we haven't done it, because it really does create misperceptions out there in terms of what we're doing. And so certainly to Treasury Board, if you have, certainly you would have my support to be a little bit more clear in terms of that particular reporting structure. But having said that, we've talked about the $100 million that has been administratively frozen, and you gave some, I think some reasonable explanations. But what we don't have, and I certainly am just asking, is if you could table that $100 million specifically, what's been frozen, why it's been frozen. I don't expect that it's here today, but I think we need to be able to see what was not spent, why it was not spent, and it's reprofiled for next year versus what truly has lapsed. And that's my one request to the...
Thank you very much. We have that table, and we would be very pleased to table that with the committee for the benefit of all members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To our guests here today, thank you first of all for being here. It's much appreciated. This is always an interesting. I'm still learning a lot of this whole supplemental Cs and things like that, learning where it all goes. So I guess if you could just lay out for me a little bit how we get to. At the beginning of the year we put out a budget for that. Is there an easier way to watch it flow out other than this? Because it seems like we have the budget here and the expenditures here, and nothing seems to line up. Is there a place where I can go that it lines up a little bit easier? We can see the money flowing out.
Thank you for the question. So I believe the minister in previous appearances has, in her opening remarks, has talked about how the current estimates process does not work from her vantage point of being a parliamentarian for so many years in terms of providing that clarity that you've quietly noted. And that's why in the President of the Treasury Board's mandate letter, he is charged with a mandate of doing a reform of the estimates. And my understanding is that the President of the Treasury Board and his officials are in engagement with the Public Accounts Committee in terms of the reform process and trying to understand what is a reporting structure that a previous member has cited that that works best for alignment. So some of the options that are being discussed, as I understand, between the Public Accounts Committee and the Treasury Board is things like trying to ensure that when budget is tabled, that there is that the main estimates tries to, when eventually tabled, include substantially more of those budget announcements in, so that we try to minimize the disconnect between the main estimates and the budget for parliamentarians. So that's just one option that is being discussed. They're talking about things like trying to, as another member mentioned, trying to deal with the public accounts reporting so that these notions of gross lapse don't give an unfair kind of picture of with the degree of offender. But it is a bit of a conundrum. There have been some experiments done in other jurisdictions, such as the province of Ontario and in Australia, that are also being looked at in terms of alignments. But I will defer to the Public Accounts Committee in terms of what best works for Parliament going forward.
Thank you.
Second.
All right. I guess I'll just express a little bit of displeasure in the fact that there doesn't seem to have been any work done on accounting for how the carbon tax is going to affect INAC. I know that the largest community in my riding is the town of Whitecourt, and it's the carbon tax is going to cost them just like very easy targets just on their fuel and natural gas costs of next year is going to cost them $120,000 increase, and they said that's the piece that we can easily identify. Because they know last year we used this much diesel fuel, we used this much natural gas, the price is going up by this amount. So we can see exactly what it is. They said there's a lot of hidden costs with the carbon taxes for like anything we get shipped in. We don't know, like we know that it's going to be an increased cost, but we don't know what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. We're moving now to MP Massey.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to come back to the funding which was committed under the Jordan Principle. The reason why I'm coming back to this matter is because several witnesses shared with us their concerns on the amounts which were committed versus the money which was actually spent. In the documents my colleague Mr. Saganash was referring to, it says that $11.4 million were spent out of the budget and approximately 1,500 cases were processed. In the supplementary estimates, you're asking for an additional $1 million. Explain to me, in light of the money already spent and the budget, this additional $1 million will be spent on what exactly? Well, you cannot mix up two things. Yes, $88 million was set aside to make sure that there was enough money. When you widen the scope of the Jordan Principle, when that happened in July, it was hard to know what the baseline was, the starting point, if you will. We worked with Health Canada, and Health Canada paid most of those costs. We decided to move forward cautiously to make sure that there was money left at the end of the fiscal year. So we asked for $88 million, 11.9 was spent, and we know that invoices will be coming in, so that amount will go up. As for the extra $1 million, that was given to us retroactively under INAC's mandate when people don't know whether to turn to Health Canada or INAC, money was set aside to help them navigate the process. So money was set aside for that. And part of that money will also go towards upgrading homes, for instance. So out of that $11 million, we needed $1 million to cover those additional fees. Most of the money will go towards health expenses, but another money will go towards adapting a home, widening a door to allow for wheelchair access. So our share under Sub C is that $1 million. You alluded to this, and I would like you to talk about the coordination mechanism to ensure that the money is spent well. So how do you coordinate your actions with those of your department and the Department of Health to make sure that the money is spent well on the priorities which were established? Well, on the ground, people can enter any regional office, be it from our department or Health Canada. There's also a phone line where people can get information. When the information comes in and a file is opened up, the confirmation that the money will flow starts at the point of entry. And in the back office, we coordinate our efforts. So under the Jordan principle, the system had to be as simple as possible. Back then, we didn't know who had the proper jurisdiction, but today that's changed. People enter the door, they get the services, and we sort it out amongst ourselves. So the person walking through the door will get service regardless of where they turn to. And then we do the reconciliation afterwards, which was the greatest criticism leveled at us. Do I have any time left to conclude? So on the basis of this mechanism, which seems to be more straightforward, has there been an increase in the number of children who have received better, more fluid services in the last few months? There were barely a dozen or so before July, and now there are over 3,000. Thank you.
Concludes our round of questions. Thank you for coming forward and being prepared with those answers. I believe there's a couple of information pieces that are going to come through to members, through the clerk. Is that how it normally works? Is there any informations coming to MP MacLeod? Okay. The clerk will follow up with you. And you requested a piece of information. Thank you for that. And now we're going to move to the votes. So pursuant to Standing Order 81-5, the committee will now dispose of the Supplementary Estimate C for the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2017. Do I have unanimous consent to deal with all votes in one motion? Agreed. Shall all the votes under Indian Affairs and Northern Development of the Supplementary Estimate C 2016-17 be carried? On division. Thank you. What else do I have to do? Oh, shall I report these votes to the House? On division. No, just teasing. I shall report this to the House. Thank you, everybody. Oh, I wanted to just remind you a little bit about the calendar. February 28th, preliminary witness deadline for third party. March 7th is a planning meeting. March 9th, the department will be back to discuss the default prevention and management policy. Okay? Got all that? Don?
Just a point of order, Madam Chair. My friends across the aisle were referring to some carbon tax. I don't believe. I don't know what that is. I think it's a price.
I think you'll have to take that outside.
Price on carbon pollution, I believe.
Oh, motion to adjourn. Yes, I think that's.